So, Luka Nation, we have Mr. Peter Steinberg from SGC here, the CEO. You guys, I'm going to be manning the chat here on the right-hand side. So if you have any questions, topics, thoughts as we're going through the show that you want to share, feel free. I'll actually pass the intro to you, Cage. So we'll have people joining in. As you guys join in, if you have questions, if you have topics, if you have anything you want to feel heard, drop them in. I'll be managing the chat. Peter, nice to have you. Cage, always a pleasure, my friend.
Peter. So, Peter, I got to start this off. Look at that. They're already in with the comments. So let Peter see some comments. He loves responding. A couple things. Number one, welcome to social media. It feels weird, this old man saying this to you, someone who is younger than me. But yeah, I mean, we're happy to have you. I saw some awesome videos, saw some posts, so you responded to comments. I mean, it's a long time coming, and I know the community is happy to have you. So that's first and foremost. But I'm just going to jump right in because last week was crazy. Right? I'm going to call it the pricing wars. What's up, Octane? I'm going to call it the pricing wars. I'm going to call it the craziness. And what's amazing about it is we knew the timing because we obviously, our podcast is sponsored by SGC. We know what's going on behind the scenes. We have a non-disclosure. We can't say anything, but we get to talk to you. And last week, leading up to the Thursday morning video announcement, 10 a.m. Thursday morning about the new pricing, we knew it was coming. We couldn't wait. We wanted to, we had it posted. We were ready to put the new pricing up, the SGC tile on our page. And it's Wednesday night. You're getting ready. You're going to get a nice night's sleep. It's like Christmas Eve. Pete's ready for Christmas morning to announce and give this gift to everybody. It's, a new pricing and kind of stimulate the market, as Andrew likes to call it, a little stimmy, get everybody the pricing. And before you fall asleep, it's 10 o'clock at night and PSA comes out with a price thing. It's just kind of like a matter of fact, like, oh, by the way, here you go. You're doing Funkos, whatever they're called. And oh yeah, we're also going to reduce the price. I'm sitting there going, oh my God, like what's Pete thinking at that moment? He's about to do this in the morning. Clearly, it's maybe they found out and they wanted to jump the gun. I have no idea. But take me there, 10 o'clock at night, and you're like, all right, do I just go live now? Like, what's the story, man? Give me the narrative, because we knew that pricing was coming for days.
Right. Yeah, so did we. If you guys think that those videos that I shoot where I'm kind of behind the camera, there's no teleprompter, by the way, which I'm very proud of. That is legitimately just go and I speak it and I shout and yell and scream and bang the table. But that's some sincere stuff right there. But make no mistake, those videos are not recorded the morning that they're put out there. I could promise you that. This price decrease was really a strategic move that we've been planning for I don't even want to say a very long time, more just a long time. And I'll tell you why, Cage, because when the market got a little tighter, okay, and PSA started opening up some new services, naturally, the number of cards going to SGC, as expected, fell. Now, the fun part is that if you asked me a year ago, hey, Pete, what's going to happen if PSA, with all of their capacity and that big brand, if they're lower, if they're cheaper than your service, how many cards do you think you'll get in? Cage, a year ago, I would have told you I'm going to get in 0 cards. The day that PSA is cheaper than SGC is the day that I am receiving 0 cards to grade. Well, I got to tell you guys, a reason that it took us kind of as long as it did is we had to be very careful in feeling out exactly where the hobby stood, to know exactly kind of where to insert our brand to help. And the reason I say that is because we were receiving almost, not exactly, but somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 cards a day, while SGC was priced at $30 and PSA was priced at $22. So surely before we lower price at all in that circumstance, we have to be absolutely certain that we're ready to offer that price point. We're ready to provide people the same great customer service and turnaround time that they're used to grading with SGC, just doing it at a more economical point. I think we recognized that our pricing was really set during such a different time, which was, I believe it was April, May of 2021. But just to kind of circle back around here after this monologue, I think the biggest thing was that we knew we were going to drop price, but I'd say we knew exactly what those prices would be probably 2-3 weeks before we really, had the website ready and the video content was shot. But make no mistake, I was as shocked as anyone to see what happened the night before. Let's put it that way. Let's put it that way. And for anyone watching, you said welcome to social media. I'm on social media to discuss exactly this issue. I've been taking it, and what I mean by taking it is kind of like taking their CRAP for a long time with my mouth shut, because I don't want to ruffle feathers and things like that. But the bottom line is, guys, SGC does not react. SGC has been leading the way for 2.5 years now, and kind of teaching, in my biased opinion, teaching these almost hobby superpowers how they should be running things. It seems like they're almost learning from us rather than the other way around.
Jason Silva from Reebok gets it. It's funny because I was just about to ask that question. Jason, thank you. 41K gold, and everyone wants to go follow Jason. Andrew will answer this. I'm curious what you would say, right? What changed? Because if we go back a year ago, right, and we had that conversation, PSA is going to come out, drop the prices down. Let's even take it to the more ridiculous truth. We had a conversation a year ago. You're at 30 and they're at 22, right? Not even that, that it's the same price. They are, a significant amount less than you.
Right.
And you think, all right, I'm not going to get a single card in. But now, because I guess of what you've done for the last year during that time, you are still getting in significant amounts of cards. Is it a dedicated fan base? Is it brand loyalty? Is it, I know what Andrew's going to say, but you tell me, what is it that SGC has done in the last year? This is your time, man. Go ahead and, pound your chest a little bit and take credit for it, because, clearly I would have agreed with you. And I think we may have even talked about that, right. And I think I would agree with that statement, but it's not what happened. So you have to give yourself some credit, because what you guys have done over that last year is why people are still sending you thousands of cards. Right.
Yeah, look, I think we built a brand, and I think I have the easiest job in the world going out there and marketing almost pretty much as close to an instantaneous turnaround time as a company can have. Our graders happen to be, again, biased opinion, but the most experienced, knowledgeable grading team out there. If there's one thing that I've had a hand in, it's building the culture of SGC, which I know is largely built around just giving the hobby kind of that unbiased referee that it needed 25 years ago when card grading was created. So I think that it hasn't been tough to convince the public that we're doing it the right way, because we just are. That's why I'm live with you right now, because there are no secrets happening in my office that I want to shield from the hobby. But
Pete, I got one more question for you.
I think we built a brand.
I agree with it. I got one more question for you. I'll let Andrew do his, Howard Cosell stuff, but it's live. So, we want to make sure people, hear this. One of my favorite things about working in the hobby is we get to work with partners who say something, and every one of our partners says this. And I think the ones that we work with believe it, that they're not interested in just their piece of the pie. They're interested in growing the entire pie, so that the entire hobby does better. And they're interested in making sure that, it all grows for everybody to be able to succeed, mostly the customers, the consumers, the hobby collectors, you name it. But that there's room for everybody to operate in here. And that the hope with fanatics coming in and all this other fun stuff is that this, what we're doing now is laying the groundwork for the whole thing to grow. So the question, is it fair for me to say that the consumer wins by you doing this? That it's PSA, SGC, no matter how you slice it, no matter which narrative you're going to believe, no matter what it is, we come on here, we talk about PSA and you both drop prices in the same week. To me, that's a win for the consumer. That's a good thing that there's that competition out there instead of, monopoly or just one company to do. And the end user, the customer is winning, especially in a time where maybe people aren't sending as many cards in because the hobby may be even, contracting a little bit. So is that fair? I mean, do you think the same way as a hobby participant?
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I think it's a fantastic thing. The PSA is at 18 a card. Make no mistake about it. The part that I want to correct is just the misconception that we're at 18 on our lowest service because they're at 18. No. They're at 18 because the SGC team decided that the hobby was ready for $18 a card. And I could get into a lot of reasons why that is a fact. not an opinion. But
does it matter? Like the ends justify the means. The people win.
Agreed. The only thing I'd say, Andrew, is that I have a team here that we have been huddled up in a 10-foot by 10-foot box of a room for weeks and weeks and weeks, literally having a conversation. What does the hobby want? What does the hobby need right now? How do we do this? And when we set it all up and we start calling some of our kind of, I guess you'd say, connections or network in the hobby to give them that update. And then we're told that PSA 15 minutes after that conversation lowered their price, called them back 2 hours later to lower their price again, and then made an update at 10 p.m. at night after they just announced that they're grading Funko Pops. Look, call it. I'm not giving an opinion. I'm just giving facts that the hobby didn't have access to.
Monkey see, monkey do. Cage buys a Joe Montana. I buy a Joe Montana. Cage buys a Michael Jordan. Hey, monkey see, monkey do.
I legitimately believe that SGC, and certainly myself, is kind of the whatever you want to call the face of this thing, however you want to say it. I really feel like we have the hobby behind us. Like the collectors who have been here for more than 18 months, they know how this whole thing works. They see through all of the smoke screens, and I think they've gotten behind us because, in all honesty, we do things right. We feel like we have a pretty good barometer of how the hobby feels, and we just want to make decisions on their behalf. So you're right. It doesn't matter, and I'm just saying that we don't follow. That's not in our DNA.
Bobbles and ball cards. First, a hilarious name. I like what you said. What are some things that were talked about in that 10 by 10 room that we haven't heard of? Like, what do you? Like, obviously, it's like opinions. Like, what does the hobby need? But right. I think, the quality of your life, I've said this a few times, isn't actually the answers. It's the questions we ask. Sometimes we ask the wrong questions and we get the wrong answers. You don't ask questions. You literally just give answers. So don't worry.
But I got to piggyback. Did you guys, I mean, I gave them an idea, Andrew. You were on the call, but I mean, in that 10 by 10 room, I know they bounced my ideas off there. I know everyone loves the tux, but are we going to have slabs with the Dumb and Dumber tux, the blue ruffled tux, the orange tux? Are we going to have? No.
To hit on kind of Andrew's point, because that's a really good question, kind of what was talked about. I mean, let's face it, like the pricing is in our hands. And at the end of the day, I could have come out and said, guys, grading is $6, like $6 a card with SGC. The problem is, as you can imagine, all of a sudden there's not a single employee in my building who's receiving a raise. I'm probably laid off because they can't afford any of us in the building. Turnaround times are absolutely years and years long. Collectors are unhappy. So what I'm trying to say is we tried to find that perfect middle ground. I think what the period of time did that we took to kind of wait it out, read the market, is it showed us people love the turnaround time. They want cheaper grading, which is why we made the move we did. And you need cheaper grading. It's not even a want, but not cheaper grading at the behest of the experience. Because the fact is, what we always talk about in our building that no one else in the hobby has is I don't think there are many people at this point, call me biased, that say, I sent these cards to PSA for fun. I've seen some videos, the vitriol, where these people are insulting SGC customers at the time paying $30 a card because the ROI on some cards just isn't there. And that's a fact. If it's a cheaper card that you want to get graded, you're not going to make money sending it in if you're paying a price like $30. However, you don't make money going to the bowling alley and having a night out with your friends, or watching a movie that you could see at home but going to the theater, or going out for a steak that you could cook yourself and save yourself some money. In other words, grading with SGC is fun. And that is what cards are supposed to be about. And the reason it's fun is because you send your cards, you get them back. If you have a problem, we answer you. The young, passionate guys here to tell you all about what's going on all the time. It's something that we have that I think the others don't. And I think that's a real problem with this hobby that needs to change. But we went for pricing that checked the box of being kind of friendlier, if nothing else, while also maintaining who we are as a brand, which is the people that treat you right, or something's got to change with us.
Well, Pete, listen, one of the things we love about you is sometimes in this hobby, there's fake it till you make it, and that's kind of the way it is, especially with, the influencer culture, the flipper culture. It's just, you show everybody the private jet that you went to the Dallas show on, even though you probably, driving there in your mom's minivan. But I do have unlimited ideas, Jason, it. But but here's the fun part. What I love about you is that you don't pretend to be perfect, because by pretending to be perfect, you're going to wind up hurting the end consumer. And you, for lack of a better way of saying this, the reason why you're so measured with what you're doing, because SGC got burned in the beginning of this whole craziness. Yeah. So I believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I believe why you're so measured, why you basically balance the scales of pricing and turnaround time is because, like when I was 8 years old and I burned my chin on the cookie sheet trying to get those cookies before they were cool enough. They just came out of the oven and I wanted that cookie. I learned you got to give it a minute. You can still have all the cookies you want. Just don't burn your face on the cookie sheet. It's one of those kind of moments. And I think it makes the company better for it,
Yeah. It also, I agree with you. It does make it very hard to see people. Again, that's why it's hard to see people say, well, we reacted, or to see people say, I saw a lot of comments, Pete's asleep at the wheel. I'm not asleep. I'm here.
Pete doesn't
sleep ready yet, and it's hard to see those comments in the meantime, but it is the right move. It's like we've made some wacky things. We've chosen some wacky decisions in the past. And in the moment you look at them and sometimes you really scratch your head. But when you step back and you look at the bigger picture, it all makes sense, man. We have the hobbies back. We really do. We don't pretend to be perfect in our decision making. Sometimes our lenses are a bit off, or I make a mistake personally. But I can tell you one thing. I legitimately come into the office and say, how do I win the support of guys like you guys, of card collectors, of card people? And the way you do it is you don't lie. You don't, you do the best you can possibly do with their interests in mind. And that's what we have through and through here at SGC.
So can I ask a few questions from the audience? And speaking of Instagram comments, I think they're going to be concerned. So speaking of transparency, great to see you on social. Why now? Why
he's reacting? He saw other people coming on, so he reacted.
Yeah,
he's just a reactor.
Exactly. No, a few things. The first is that I am truly as obsessed with cards as anyone you guys have ever met. I mean, Cage, we've had conversations about our PCs and what we collect and things like that. I am just absolutely addicted to this, where the line of kind of work and pleasure is so blurry. I go home and that's when I'm on eBay and looking at auctions and things like that. So I think what I felt is that I'd be scrolling through Instagram and I'd see people with cards or saying something that I wanted to contribute to, and I just didn't have the voice to do it. It certainly wasn't appropriate that SGC was doing it as a company.
He's asleep at the wheel. No, bitch, I'm right here.
Something like that.
That's Andrew's words.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of.
Don't say that. Don't reply with that, Pete.
Exactly.
Let Andrew do that.
I have our PR department. And
exactly. There was that. I wanted to personally kind of be able to enjoy cards publicly with people, because I enjoy them so much without them knowing I was enjoying them, kind of.
I can tell you the move doesn't surprise me, Pete, because I saw you at the National. That was the first time we got to hang out with you. And the forward-facing, just the interaction with, we saw a guy show you a card and you were like, it was in another slab, another company slab, and you actually spent some time. It wasn't a high-value card, a couple $100 card, which, it's not – normally you don't get the CEO coming to take a look at, I can't guarantee anything, but to me, this looks like we'll send it to grade and the whole deal. I watched someone give you a hug after a 10-minute conversation about their card. That you have to be out there, right? That personal interaction that you saw, it doesn't surprise me that it took a couple of weeks and bam, you're out there, because that's what people want, right? At base, yes, there's cardboard, yes, there's cards, yeah, there's money, there's transactions, but it's a person who owns this card sending it to another person to grade the card and send it back to them. This is you're taking care of the assets of people, and it's people behind it. I love that interaction. That was one of the highlights of the National for me.
Nice. Look, I don't know how to be another way. I always apologize to people for the way I am, because it's the real way I am. And if I didn't, what I mean by that is the passion and the I'm a loudmouth and I'm, but it's me, and I could fake it and I could act like, as polished as the other guys, and we'll take this. I don't know. My whole thing is that I started here as kind of the low man on the totem pole, and I don't know anything else. Like, that's just who I am. And until ownership gives me the boot and says we're going with the polished, Silicon Valley guy, I'm the guy. And I could just say I might not be as smart as these other guys, but I care about you more.
Silicon Valley guys don't cash flow. And I was actually going to talk about that. Like, I wonder if we like overthink business. Like, at the core, don't we just want to talk cards with our friends, get cards graded for affordable price, bullshit a little bit online, and if we make some money, great. Try not to lose some money.
Right.
So
you've officially become a collector, Andrew.
Yeah,
Your role grows up.
Let me ask this is a question from Kamikaze Sports Card Hybrid. Any talks with ComC regarding submitting cards, basically raw to graded, at a variety of marketplaces where they're stored? This one's ComC, where with the click of a button, you could have those cards sent to SGC and graded.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, basically where we're at right now, remember this update, we've seen a clear uptick in submissions, as one could imagine. But we still have yet to see, remember, any card submitted via a group submitter, we don't know that those cards are coming to us pretty much until they're in our building. So I would say anywhere between probably a week and a half to even as much as 3 weeks from now, we're really going to be kind of waiting and seeing to see how much the hobby actually liked this update. And believe me, the support of everyone in the comment section means the world to me. I mean, it really does. But at the end of the day, my capacity, meaning SGC's ability to grade and send out cards, is what it is. It's set in stone, at least right now. And I think when we have an idea for what the demand is, that's when we can start pursuing some of these other initiatives. But we are very aggressively looking at some really creative ways that SGC can expand its footprint and just offer a better way to grade to the hobby.
Cage, you want to know a fun fact? And I wonder if Peter knew this. So I bought a card off PWCC. It was a 2000 Ultimate Michael Jordan patch card. And Basketball Card Guy has the bronze, and I think he had the gold, but he never had the silver. So I sent it to him, and he had one of them graded with SGC. And SGC, what he told me, was the original, encased with BGS. They were the original encased in the 2000s.
Oh, we had a lot. You see cards coming in here, Andrew, with these. I mean, remember the hobby's come a long way. It used to be a lot tighter than it is today.
Blue. It was blue.
Yeah, we had a lot of those kinds of partnerships, I guess you'd say, and kind of I don't know, promotions, however you want to call it. And I think some are inappropriate today. Like, in other words, I guess what I'm saying is there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. And we're very open to what we feel are kind of the right ways in which we can make these partnerships.
So I love the creativity from the comments. I love the, hey, it's encased. That was what you guys used to do. I love the, hey, can we get ComC? But Pete, what I'm hearing, and again, tell me if I'm wrong here, is right now, numero uno. They say in real estate, it's location, location, location. For you guys, for grading, it's turnaround time, turnaround time, turnaround time. And before you start exploring these other initiatives, these fun things that may make sense for the hobby or cool, or a ComC, raw to grading, you name it, you have to make sure that you can still get the same turnaround time, because that's what people have come to expect. The last thing you want to do is enter into something where, too many cards come in, you don't have the capacity to do it, and boom, all of a sudden turnaround times are back. So I like that. I think it's measured. I think that if that is the main pillar right now, authentic, you're making sure that the cards are graded consistently and the turnaround time is I mean, it's super fast. Definitely, quicker than anybody else can do. I think everybody's okay waiting for this stuff. But I mean, is that the reason why we're so measured with any of these other kind of like offshoot ideas?
Yeah. I mean, remember, just to be totally transparent, I sit at this desk in the headspace of the community, the collectors, and like, it would be great if you told me SGC was doing this funky thing over here, only if it meant I'm still getting my cards back.
Right.
Sacrificed, and So it really makes sense. Don't get me wrong. The intention, the absolute goal is to be able to walk and chew gum and do a ton of other things. But let's face it, this company has grown so rapidly over the last 2 years. I mean, we were sending out, when I joined SGC, 250 cards a day. And right now, I happen to believe on a very strong day, I think we could do about 7,000. So it's been a crazy 2 years here. Remember, that's without any institutional money. Pete's still the guy. There's not anything crazy happening behind the scenes. So I think that I think I have to keep the interests of collectors in mind, but it doesn't need to be in replace of doing that kind of stuff as well.
Hey, can I keep peppering you? First off, you've been super generous with your time. Is it okay if I keep peppering you with a few questions?
I'm getting off this call when you guys say it's done. My time is not as valuable as people think. I'm good, man. Let's answer.
No way. Get back there and start grading.
So I just asked you this offline, so I felt it was appropriate. Can you give people, the 30 seconds, 60-second spiel on this?
Right.
So for you guys listening, sorry, Mervin asks, are we going to see autograph authentication again from SGC?
It's a good question. Definitely one I get a lot, and my answer is pretty uniform, no matter really who's asking it or if it's online or offline. And the answer is, as I've kind of alluded to, SGC likes to do things right, or we don't want to do those things. If we did autograph authentication, there are a few kind of very obvious, I guess you'd say, costs associated with it. The first is that we'd have a little less attention on cards. Let's face it, it's different. I'd be lying to you if I said that approaching a new initiative like that would not distract, to some degree at least, us from what we've been doing best for a long, long time, which is grading cards. At the same time, the autograph authentication industry is different than the card grading industry. There are different pitfalls in card grading than there are in autograph authentication. In fact, it's almost two entirely different businesses or industries that happen to both be enjoyed by the same people a lot of the time. There's a big
realistically, they have to guess some part of the time. Like if there's no video associated, how do they possibly know if it's a real auto?
Right, and that's a great point. And that's something that we look at ourselves. In other words, I think you could kind of compare it. Imagine a 1933 Gaudi Ruth comes in our doors. Our grader needs to look at that and make the decision if that card's, let's say, going to go in a 5 or it's going to be deemed to be trimmed. And those calls are often really, really tough. And I do not envy the individual making them, but they need to happen. The difference is, though, even if you say that the Gaudi Ruth is a 5 that had a slight trim somewhere, we just missed it, in other words. We got it wrong, okay? It's a real Gaudi Ruth. It's a real Gaudi Ruth. And on an autograph, if you get it wrong, you're holding toilet paper. And that's a big deal. I mean, if you really think about that, then you think about the fact that a trimmed edge on a Gaudi Ruth can only look so many ways. In other words, like you could train your team to get really, really good. It's still hard. And you still make mistakes, don't get me wrong, but you could get really, really, really good. I was an autograph chaser my whole life. I have seen firsthand how different Albert Pujols signs when he's in a rush as opposed to when he's doing a signing and he, writes out the entire Pujols.
Who was your first love? Who was your first chase?
My first autograph ever was David Wright. I grew up a Mets fan in Port St. Lucie.
That's why you hired Logan. Send my condolences to Logan as well.
Yeah, the ball's actually right here. It's kind of cool. But anyway, it's in my display. But that's my point. Autograph authentication, there's so much variance in the way that these players sign. I mean, you could never convince me that it wasn't Giannis who just wrote the line as he's getting out of his car to go to the hotel. And likewise, I've seen some people do some really good forgeries. So it's a little, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little scary, honestly. But the hobby wants what it wants. And remember, the collectors in that sector of the hobby, they know that about autograph authentication. And, you'd almost argue if they're playing the game anyway, why not try to be an even better referee than the ones in place today? So that's some real stuff, by the way, guys. Like it's not pretty always. It's really not. But that's how I feel.
I mean, more than fair. I mean, I'd be nervous.
Yeah.
Something I'm surprised no one talks about, and this is why I sub. And like speaking of like toilet paper and all that stuff, like the more your cards are not in your possession, the higher your risk is, right? So like if you think about what we do here, and I know when you buy the cards Cage does, it doesn't really matter. But 80% of the hobby speculates on players. Like they buy players that are still active. And like there's this great like equation, Alex Hormozy, someone I've been listening to a lot. It's like most companies are like, we're the best. Here's what other people say, and that's how they sell you. But the best companies like Amazon or Netflix, they shrink the time it takes for you to get your services, right? And as little as possible mitigate that risk threshold. Well, when we buy cards of players, that's like it could go to zero at any moment. The longer your cards are out in public or out of your hands, it's a risk. And I'm surprised no one talks about that part. We talk about pricing, but we don't talk about the risk associated when your cards aren't in your hands. And that's why I sell SGC. Because regardless, I know I'm going to have my cards back in 10 days. And that's one game. I could time that perfectly with the NFL Sunday. Right. And I'm not as stressed. I'm not as worried in my investment. And I don't hear anyone talking about that. So
yeah, look, we're starting. I don't know if you guys have seen. I wouldn't blame you if you haven't, because we haven't fully kind of gotten the ball rolling yet on it. But we're starting a campaign. We actually, I believe, we trademarked the term "collect smarter." And the reason we have "collect smarter" is that on the surface, you sit back and you say, "Oh my goodness, these SGC 10s." They only sell for 70% of these PSA 10s. And then I'll ask you this. Are you more confident that if the card is truly deserving of the 10 grade, whose team are you more confident will actually award the 10? Now, if your answer is PSA, all the power to you. That's fine. You should be going to PSA. But if your answer is SGC, then right there we're comparing a PSA 9 to an SGC 10. So these are not equivalent grades, because you're more confident that my team is going to give your card the grade it deserves rather than one that you may not agree with. You then factor in that if that card has an autograph, we're throwing an auto grade on it free of charge if and only if the autograph is deemed to be a 10 by our grading team. You know, you then factor in the turnaround time and the fact that look what's happened with Tua. You could have made a lot of money grading Tuas, and then you could have lost a lot of money. And SGC was kind of your only weapon at your disposal to make it go right rather than wrong.
Forget about the injury. What if it's somebody who got right? What if it's Jalen Hurts? What if it's somebody who's actually right? Here's what I do, Pete. Let's just call it what it is. It's a $30 base card that in your slab as a 10 becomes $75, but a PSA slab becomes $100.
Right.
But that $100 you're getting back in 6 months.
Yeah.
You're $75, you're getting it back next week.
And Cage,
you take that $75 and buy two $30 cards, and now becomes $150, and do it again and again.
And that's assuming when you pull the PSA card out of that nice box, it says 10 on it. Because if it says 9, this entire argument's wiped out the window. Yep. So I'm not here to say that anyone is better grade. Like, again, if you have PSA standards down and you're sure that they stick to those standards, then my argument is null and void, and that's fair. But if you sit there sometimes and you scratch your head, that's when I say, well, let's stop comparing 10s to 10s. Let's more look at it and say, if a 10 happens, then. And then you say, well, what is the likelihood of hitting the 10? But the bottom line is, there at this point, with our new pricing, especially where you're grading as low as 18 a card, I mean, there's a segment of cards where the risk is very, very low, and the potential is really there. I mean, remember, we're talking about collect smarter, which is geared towards people that are looking to make money in cards, but equally as important are the people who just are here because they enjoy it. Like I am when I sat down at my restaurant last night and ate a steak. I was not there to make money off my steak. I was there to enjoy my steak.
Medium rare.
Are you a well done guy?
Medium rare every time.
Medium rare, of course.
Yeah.
You like
Andrew put ketchup on it.
So this is like a two-part question. Can you talk to us? I don't put ketchup on it. Come on. Is that a shot at Cole? Tux. Talk to us about the tux. Will there be a QR code? Will there be a barcode? How do you think about the tux, the label, the brand with that?
Sure. So the thing that a QR code does, a lot of the time people see QR codes and they associate it with this like deep learning or like intense technology. A QR code basically stops you from having to type in something. That's what it does. We are likely not going to have a QR code, but we are going to have exactly what a QR code does. It's called OCR. We are going to, I don't want to give too much information, so the next time that I'm shouting behind my desk, it's an
The slabs are getting
announcement.
smarter.
But the bottom line is that we are going to offer you everything a QR code offers you, which is basically, again, just the ability to not have to type anything in. That is all the QR code is doing. Basically, it's saving you the time going to the website, typing in the information, and having it populate. We have some exciting announcements coming very, very soon.
Nice.
This Philly Joe might have to elaborate in the comments because this is a little bit more in depth. But first off, shout out to Philly Joe. I love that. Hi, Peter. Can you discuss the centering grading on cards cut not centered on purpose? See, like the Topps 206, 2020, 2022 cards. Right. Does that make any sense? Because that's not mine.
I think it does. I think what that individual is asking is when you don't have, let's say, 4 equal borders, how do you judge centering when intentionally the top border is supposed to be either significantly bigger or smaller than the rest, let's say? And the answer is that our grading team gets themselves very, very familiar with the way that these issues are intended to be produced. In other words, what is a perfect version of the card out of the pack from that set? And if that means that the top border is yay big while the bottom one is quite small, we know that going in. It's very, very rare that we even see a card that we're not kind of familiar with, just because, as you can imagine, with a large grading team, that's their full-time jobs. But it does happen from time to time, and we research them the same way anyone else would. I mean, they have a large, what do you call it? Kind of a large, I guess you'd say, database to some extent of these things where they have kind of shortcuts to seeing this information. But they use Google, eBay, and other things to check on the other copies. In other words, I remember, when during the hobby's real boom, 2019 Topps Chrome, the Tatises, I believe they all had a certain almost like refractor line on the prism refractors. Our team was very aware of that because if that line happened to be a little less exaggerated, if I'm not mistaken, our team would actually have a tolerance where if the line is this kind of line, it's good for a 9.5 and up. But if it's a little more egregious comparatively to the other copies, that's when we hit it. So it's important to approach grading with context rather than, it's like a marriage of technicality and this kind of like artisan craft, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Cage, any questions? I'll keep going, man. People are.
Well, I mean,
how I judge a live is if there's more people or less people. And now we're approaching 40 people here, so I could keep going.
Yeah, I mean, ask the questions. I got crazy ones, but I already know what Pete's answer is going to be. so go ahead and ask these questions.
What's one of your crazy ones, or is it for me?
Sure. No, I mean, one of my crazy ones is I watch baseball. I watched baseball for a long time. And while I think that, tech is helpful in the game, I love that it's not robotic. I love that the umpires still have some human, interest, especially the umps that have been doing this for 40 years.
Right.
And the ones, and they're still, they're still policing the umps, right? They still, this ump is going to get a demerit this year. He doesn't get to go to the World Series because he had too many calls outside the strike zone. Right. They know which umps are doing it the right way. And if you get the best umps calling balls and strikes, is there really a need in baseball for a robotic strike zone?
Right.
I tend to think no. How about you, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, let me ask you this, Cage. Is the question more, if AI was there, is there a need for human graders, or is it almost the opposite? Where are the human graders so good right now we don't need AI?
Yeah, I mean, that I think it's kind of both, right? Or is the perfect answer a combination of the two? As tech gets better, you still need, those the humans who know whether or not that Gaudi is fake.
Right.
I mean, because
the pitfall with AI is that all AI means is that a computer is and please don't take this as me schooling everyone on AI. This is way. I'm not that.
That Silicon Valley Pete.
That's not
From
that's not,
SGC Pete to Silicon
Port St.
Valley.
Lucie High School science special here. Here we go.
That's not me. But what I'm just trying to say is that in AI, you're basically learning through repetition. Okay. And someone has to tell that AI that if the card has a dimple on the back here, it's okay for an 8. And if the dimple moves on the card and the next time, maybe that's a 7. So the AI now knows, okay, dimple here, 8, dimple here, 7. That is such a strenuous process that is literally completely worthless unless the person who's training the AI is the single best expert in the world. Because if they're not the single best expert in the world, then sure, we finally have done it. We have automated grading. But we have lousy automated grading that isn't assigning grades the way they should. So I think AI, the true answer, and I've spoken to some of the other grading companies about this, and as far as I know, I think they share the same opinion. AI is best used as an assist and in certain ways. But I think, although I'm open to a universe where AI just takes over the grading process, I'm not open to it today. Because it's not ready. It's just not. And anyone who's telling you that they can grade autonomously and spit out the right grades on a card ranging from, the 1888 old judge set to the 2022 top set is just feeding you a bunch of baloney.
Jason Silva, for the people listening, says there's only one AI. Andrew shows off his Allen Iverson sneakers. But Pete, what I hear what you're saying is you already know the AI is not better than what's going on now because you guys have the best grader. And he's not teaching the machine learning. And you guys know Derek at Heritage is too busy. He's not teaching the machine learning either. So that's the best 2 graders in the world. And they're not teaching the machines. So you already know that it's not as good as that's what's going on out there. So
I just want to say, too, I'm not saying thank you to everyone. All these comments, guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate everything, guys.
The lives are fun. Are you guys ever going to grade tickets is a question.
We used to grade tickets. When I joined SGC, we graded tickets. It's almost like see my answer on autographs. Like the one thing that I give a ton of credit to PSA about is the way guys think about how much liability that company just stares right in the face when they open their doors to operate a day. I mean, they're grading tickets and coins and now Funko Pops and, cards and autographs and game used memorabilia. I happen to think, and don't get me wrong, please don't think because I'm the SGC guy, I hate PSA. Far from it, far from it. I do things a little differently, but what I'm trying to say is that I admire the fact that anything you got, PSA's got your back. Like, I think that's kind of a cool thing that, in other words, they grade tickets. Like, again, there's nothing they don't do, in other words. And maybe we get to a day where SGC is in kind of a similar boat and we start really going after these things. I just think there is so much, not only untapped potential in card grading, but just there's so much still that needs to be improved. I have so much work to go after here with this insanely qualified team that I think I'm almost shooting ourselves in the foot by redirecting our sights, at least right now, on anything except expanding SGC's footprint in trading cards.
By the way, Pete, enjoyed that last couple of minutes because you're not coming on here saying, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best, everybody else sucks. I mean, it's people who say they want the collector to have the best of everything, they make comments like that. Like, right. Look, I use PSA myself, right? I mean, I use that. I'm a type 1 photo collector now. If I'm sending it to PSA, and I'm hoping it's a type 1. They've sent me back some that were type 3 that I guess I got wrong. It is what it is. I mean, your point is valid, and I mean, it shows a level of professionalism. There is a world where we all kind of operates. You're not going to announce McDonald's Happy Meal toy grading that is coming this live. Come on, man. I think that was for Cage and not for Pete, actually. By the way, I have McDonald's toys from the 90s still in the package. So if SGC ever wants to grade some of those, I have Beanie Babies like on cards still. I have ones that are in the plastic.
But that's what I mean. Like there's a right way to do it and a wrong. Like I said, I have a lot of respect for PSA. There's just a right way and a wrong way. In other words, if the Funko Pop community wants these things graded, like that's awesome. If they just added a new level of collectability, I think that is fantastic. But it's almost piggybacking off of that, that comment, which was obviously made in jest. It's like, let's just make sure we're not just going after it for the sake of going after it. Yep. I think any large corporation like Collectors, which obviously owns PSA and Golden, I hope that they look themselves in the eye and know that they have things they need to improve on. And something tells me they do. We're just here to kind of show them before they do it, if that makes sense.
So this is a tough one. I don't know if you can answer it, but I'm going to – well, actually, it's interesting. I wouldn't have asked it if I didn't
have
on the spot.
This
card next to me. So 420 Amsterdam, Edwin, we've had him on the show. He's a big Ajax fan, huge soccer collector. And I actually have this card here. So I love vintage soccer legend in the tux. I think they look cool. Mm-hmm. So he asks, why do you guys grade vintage soccer stickers harder?
It's pronounced Ajax, by the way. I don't know why you messed that up.
So I could sit here and I could BS about why we grade vintage soccer stickers harder. I can't answer that right now. As you may imagine, it's kind of a broad question. Here's what I would tell you, though, where I'm not BSing. Soccer stickers in general are thinner than tissue paper most of the time. And a common problem with them is that they get these it's almost like dents kind of thing. It's hard to describe. It's like a dent, like a light dent, just from the nature of the paper. So naturally, I think these soccer stickers have a bit more working against them in the way that they're produced. That's as far as I can go without more kind of like detail. If that makes sense. Right, but I can tell you guys, it's not like our team, because I'm in many of the meetings that our grading team holds. There is certainly no policy, almost like we're going to be tougher on these stickers. I think it's more the nature of the cards themselves that just make them a little more difficult to grade. And if you happen to find that we're tougher on them than some of the other graders, what I'd say is we're probably just kind of putting a little more weight on certain defects, whether major or minor, that another company may have less of an issue with in their grading room.
This is an Andrew question. There's a quote. It's like, when the tide pulls in is when you know who was swimming naked the whole time. Some version.
You don't want to see me swimming naked. That would not be pretty.
We've seen.
Why did we go so left?
That's I think Warren Buffett said that. It's when the tide pulls in, you see who's been swimming naked.
I thought he said buy dividend stocks. I don't know about Warren Buffett doing like skinny dipping here. I mean,
do your own research, Verizon. Do your own research. But there's been so many new grading companies pop up. The grading space way better than anybody in the comments, anybody else. How many grading companies do you see can stomach a downturn realistically? Or maybe how many does the hobby have the current participants to kind of keep afloat? Maybe some version of that.
Yeah, I think I don't want to be it's almost like you're asking for an answer that isn't pretty, but for the sake of transparency and being truthful, I'll give you that answer. Not many. These companies are in trouble. I mean, that's what's happening. A lot of these companies, and take it from me, guys, because we have started from, it's almost like the ground up here at SGC in the last 2 years, where we face so many of these challenges, even though we weren't a new company. With the massive increases in capacity and the brand, we've almost been faced with a lot of the challenges that these new companies are now facing. And their grading is very expensive. I see a lot of these new grading companies that in order to kind of differentiate themselves, they have so many of these almost like add-ons with the packaging, and we'll send you this, a kit, and the card will and that's great, but that's not even close to scalable. I mean, it doesn't matter if your company takes off like a spark. You have no chance of really becoming a viable option for the hobby to use based on the nature of your process. I think in general, I've seen how difficult this is firsthand. I mean, I remember, I won't say the company's name, but there was a company that came in and broke in actually far stronger than I think a lot of people ever thought a new grading company could. And the founder of the company started throwing around a lot of I don't know, heavy things. He had a lot of accusations to make and it was a lot of talk kind of thing. And I remember sitting back and saying, this guy just doesn't get it. Like, this guy doesn't know what he's in for entering this space. And now that company is surely on its way out, unfortunately. I guess I'm just trying to say this is really hard. There's a reason that people say there's such high barriers to entry in grading, and it isn't only name recognition. You have to get so many things right. I mean, you can't have a grading company and say, well, we only do cards from 1986 and forward, or we only do cards from 1950 and that doesn't work. That's not enough for the hobby. So although I wish the pie was growing and getting bigger for all of us, where we could almost welcome in these innovators and benefit off of the things that they're allowing us to I guess enjoy in the process. Now I would not want to be, and I hate the way this sounds, but I wouldn't want to be the new little grading company that's trying to convince you they're the best at a time like this. And I think SGC has made it incredibly hard for these companies to break in, because when there's already a larger company that has a dope like me at the helm who actually cares, who's listening with his ears wide open, it doesn't give them this clear path that I had. In fairness, I had a very clear path because no one was being listened to. So when I came up and I said, hey guys, I grew up in card shops like you. I got lucky to be in this seat. I have your back. That was so one of a kind at the time that I think that message just resonated. And when now we've been here and we're getting better as a brand, and the young kid who used to run it is slowly starting to even get a little better at his job, hopefully, it makes it harder for these.
It doesn't hurt that somehow you guys have figured out how to get graded cards back in somebody's hands before they even send them to you.
I'll tell you why, Cage, because I was on the line, man. I was in our I say to the staff all the time, I'm
online,
like
on the line.
I have a great idea. You take a picture and you put it on the line.
No.
There's Exchangegram.
Yeah, there's not a line. There's not a physical line. But my point is, Cage, is that I was encapsulating cards. I was what we call verifying, the research and ID of cards. I was the one going to Scott, our head grader, and asking him questions. I mean, literally, I sat when I must have been 24 years old, and I said to Scott, I want to become a grader. How do I do it? He said, the first thing, go back to your desk, come in here at 6:30 when we're closed, and I'll give you a stack of cards after hours, and we will go through them together. And Scott told me why this T206 with this wrinkle on the back could make for a 4 grade when one with it going through his face is a 1.5. Like, my point is when you have a guy like that who's been elevated to essentially the tippy top, you'd almost expect that your operation is running like that, because that's our thing. What we lack are the things that I almost am working on right now. We don't have an app, for example. PSA is a great app. Give them credit. I mean, they have a great app. SGC doesn't have an app. That might be changing, but my point is there's a lot that we do great, and there's a lot that we need to work on. And I think that as a hobby, you all should be looking at us and saying, keep what's great, and we appreciate it, but it's time to work on those things. And I totally recognize that. And that's what I come to do.
What do you think those things are? If you've polled people from the hobby, what do you think that they would say?
One thing I would say is technology. All of you registry people out there, guys, I see you. I hear you every day. Please know you are heard. You are heard. I mean, there are people, it almost breaks my heart to hear from people that have been here from the very, very beginning, that were almost able to enjoy certain luxuries, that as a big, big, big company doing 5,000 cards a day, we can no longer do that. For example, when I joined SGC, there were phones on everyone's desks. And if you called like at the right time, you'd literally have a grader on the phone saying like, hey, how can I help you? And that's something we cannot have the public speaking to a grader right now. No, please email customer support. That is a business parameter that I must accept, because if I don't, and I have my graders on the phone with customers, we're not going to be grading the cards right, and we're certainly not going to be sending out anywhere between 5,000 and 6,000 of them. So it's almost like all I could do is face those challenges head on. But instead I could say, hey, that customer support line, yeah, we answer that same day. Like, unacceptable for us to say, oh, we'll get back to you in a week. So it's almost like I must take, but I also try to give, if that makes sense. So technology we need to be better at. You know, I think marketing, I have not been doing a good enough job with our team of trying to educate people on what turnaround time does. It's the same way everyone says PSA cards sell for more. It's like, yes, they do. I understand. Now, in my opinion, they shouldn't on their face, because it's the same exact service. It's the same exact cards, no matter whose label says what. But the bottom line is that we need to do a better job educating the hobby on how not only they could make money with SGC, but they could enjoy grading with SGC.
Can I jump in on that, and I'll read this comment? There's a cool concept. I'm not going to waste your guys' time, but it's called velocity of money. And it's not just who has the highest profit margin, but like how velocity of money, Google it. And it's a really interesting concept.
Right.
So Hip Hop Immortal says, as a person who both used PSA and SGC, I was very satisfied with SGC. First time using PSA had me waiting almost 2 years for my cards back. That's not cool to wait that long. That's just clear cut.
Yeah, appreciate it. Obviously, that's
last question. Maybe the most kind of gives you the whole field. You know, you're playing center mid. You could play the ball anywhere you want with this. So Brett and Percy says, what are your thoughts and expectations on Fanatics? Do you foresee major changes occurring in the hobby and grading? And I'm going to do something that, as a host, I think I have the right to. Peter, I want to hear what you have to say, but I also want to hear, Cage, what you have to say on that after, and then we'll wrap.
So here's what I would say as far as like Fanatics goes. My opinion on Fanatics is honestly very similar to every other, I guess you'd say, institutional investor who's come into our space. Because remember, I know I was here first, and I know a lot of you watching were here first. So they're in our territory, okay? And what I wish they did, and I don't mean Fanatics. I'm not talking about Fanatics. I'm talking about as a whole, the feel in the air of the hobby right now. Have a little more respect for us, the ones who were here first. You know, in other words, I get it. You want to innovate. You want the technology to take over. You want these verticals. You want nice P&Ls. That's all great, and that can all happen. But I think that a lot more respect needs to be paid for the people that are basically the end collectors, feeding these middlemen, you know, providing these profits for people. The dude who hits the buy it now button and cannot wait to receive his card simply because he's a really, really big Albert Pujols fan, and Pujols is going off right now and he wants that card. Like, that's what the hobby is about. And I wish there was a greater emphasis. I really, really wish there was a greater emphasis put on educating the public, the general public, on how cool cards are. And I think a big reason that it's not happening now is they just don't have the people in place to do that, simply. I mean, I truly believe that. I think we need to grow the pie by bringing in outside people. And I happen to think that a big problem with what's going on now is that all of these companies, whether they're tech companies or apps or card grading companies, are fighting over this pie so viciously when it comes down to it. And I say that just because everyone wants their company to thrive. That's capitalism. But we're all fighting over these pieces of the pie. And what it means is that it's no longer worth anyone's time or resources to focus on growing the pie, because we're all so territorial that there's no time to try to think of really interesting ways we could shine a light into trading cards and how the hobby's been around for 150 years and how historical it is and how there's such an art element to it, an investing element. That's just not profitable to these companies right now, so they're not doing it. And I wish they were. That kind of thing. So overall, it's like grow the pie by bringing more people in to appreciate cards, and all those profits, those go up anyway because there's just so many more bodies submitting these cards for grading or buying these cards off of an auction house. That's what we need to do. Talk more about the cards and not the app that you've built so you could sell your cards easier. It's like, come on, that kind of thing. Sorry.
No, I think he's 100% right. I think the part about growing the whole pie together instead of all fighting over, the slices that are currently exist are the key. It's funny. I didn't think we'd talk about Fanatics, and we're kind of going off a little on a tangent, but I love it. I love the topic, and I love Pete's enthusiasm about it. But here's what I would say about it. I'm an old person. Maybe you guys won't get this movie reference, but one of my favorite Richard Pryor movies called Brewster's Millions, right? And he basically has a generous benefactor who leaves him a lot of money, and that is Fanatics in this current scene that we have here. So everybody thinks they're going to come in and just throw money around and grow this pie for everyone, and it's just a little sprinkle, right? Like Angela said, they're gonna come in and they're gonna solve everything. And I've talked to more people than I can tell you that is just what they think. The LCSs that are out here, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's a little bit cold right now, but when Fanatics comes in, they're gonna bring 10 times the amount of people in. Oh, the show doesn't have the foot traffic. Don't worry. When Fanatics comes in, they're gonna bring. Well, in Brewster's Millions, in order to inherit the money, there was a lesson that had to be learned by Richard Pryor about what to do with that money when you actually have it, right? And how money may change you, how money may change the people around you, and all that other fun stuff. There was a lesson that had to be learned. And I think if I'm Fanatics, I'm sitting on the sidelines making sure that the hobby is learning that lesson before this generous benefactor comes and sprinkles their money into it. I think that they want the hobby to stand on their own 2 feet. I think they want the hobby to figure out a way to not wait for them to bring mainstream John into the equation, the guy who wants to buy jerseys and memorabilia and stuff. They want the hobby to figure out how to go and be appealing to them. And I think, Pete, you hit the nail on the head. That only comes when we all kind of realize that, we do more together than fighting one another. So, it brings it back to, I don't know who gave Monty Brewster, man. That's it, Refractor Jones. I don't know who did it first. I do know who did it first. I know who reacted, and it wasn't SGC. But the positive is the consumer wins. The customer wins. The people listening to this who are in the comments, they win because now they have options where to send their cards at a price that works. And if they send it with you, they'll get it back by week 7 of the NFL season. You know what I mean? To capitalize on Jalen Hurts being 7-0 at the time. So I love it. I love your answer. And yeah, if I'm Fanatics, everybody's expecting them to come in with, the magic answer. And I think they're just going to be more measured, and they're going to expect the hobby participants who have all been making money for the last couple of years. I'm talking about the businesses, not the people, to get their stuff correct before Fanatics comes in with the magic bullet.
Yeah, look, and I also think, Cage, that there's room for both. I want to be clear about that. I say that all the time. I'm not the tech CEO, but there's room for you need the tech CEO. Mm-hmm. I'm not that guy, but what I bring is very important too, which is the way that these dealers at the National, not the corporate pavilion, that's not my game. These other companies don't like me very much because I'm kind of like the outsider here.
Too much carpet.
For the people outside of the corporate pavilion.
Too much carpet.
2 layers of carpet instead of a continental breakfast. It's signed off on that.
It's so dumb.
What I'm trying to say is that there should be a conference table, at Fanatics, almost like this this hypothetical conference table with a guy like me or you, Cage, who have been here and understand the pulse of the dealers and how they feel and the collectors, alongside the guy who comes from Silicon Valley who can help us enhance it rather than all of one or all of the other. And I think from the year, let's say 1995 to 2020, you had all of guys like us, or at least I know myself.
Yep.
And I think that now I'm seeing way too many of the guys from Silicon Valley. And it's like, let's appreciate what we all bring and let's find that perfect balance where this hobby is just what it was, except better, rather than something it's not.
So I have a book for you guys. I have 2 more copies of this. If there's any business owners watching that want one of these, shoot us a message. But one more. It's the power of just doing one more. Because in business, some days you want to quit. It's like just one more day, one more rep. So
it's like me with push-ups. I do one more. I always do one more.
One more question. And how can you make it easier for international customers to use SGC?
Yeah, this is one that's challenging, because believe me, if there's one thing that I want, it's for people overseas. And it's like, you have to understand, it's an honor for us that you even support us, guys. Like, that means so much to us that outside of the States, you want to grade your cards with SGC. It is difficult because, unlike domestic orders, there's so much that's out of our hands, obviously, whether it be the customs of a certain country, whatever it is. We're working on it. Believe me, I promise you guys, from where we started back in 2020, it's a lot easier to submit today, a lot more cost effective than it was back then. Still nowhere near where we want to be, and that is something that we are definitely going after. If I had to guess, and you know, I'm shooting a little blind here, maybe getting a little ahead of myself. But in the next few years, we're undoubtedly going to have facilities overseas, so that we have drop-off centers and things like that. And we can avoid so many headaches that our international supporters go through today. But please, guys, take it as no indication of a lack of love and appreciation for your support. It's just that these things are out of our control, and they're difficult things to work out, unfortunately. But we're very aggressively pursuing them. We really are.
We know there's more questions. We know there's passionate people in there. Ziggy, we saw you. We got people with great ideas. The best thing about Pete is he's on social now. So, you know, you can reach him. You know, if we didn't get to your question, you know how to find Pete. You're never going to sleep, Pete.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm cool with that, man. This is